They drew their blood and they looked at all these markers and they just waited. Years went by and they saw who died. And whoever died, they would look at what were the highest factors in their blood that could have predicted their death. Because most of these people had some heart issues and they died around 59, 60, 61 years old. And so out of 30 factors in the blood, there's 6. And so now they just measure these 6 factors and then they do a bunch of math and they give you a score 1 to 100. And then based on what your score is, you can see your chance of cumulative mortality over the course of the next 5 years.
What if your blood work says normal, but misses threats like inflammation or nutrient gaps that slowly wreck your energy, heart, or brain? Dr. Darren Schmidt, a holistic health disruptor who survived a crisis standard labs ignored, pioneered MVX Plus, a test that exposes what's killing you before it's too late. We'll uncover what standard labs miss and reveal why this simple blood test could solve the health mysteries your doctor can't answer. Biohacker or just fed up, this could change your health game. Hey, Darren, good afternoon. Thanks so much for taking the time to join me today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude, I definitely wanted to get into what you were talking about on your website or what's posted on your website and how we connected offline. And I think that most people will probably go to get maybe once a year, they get their labs done. Maybe some people like in the biohacking space are a little more attuned to that and they're there every couple months. But I wanted to start like back, gosh, what was it, a decade ago? You sort of had, heart crisis, mold exposure, all these sort of really bad issues that you went through, but in some way sort of exposed how maybe the standard health advice that we're given is not really working for a lot of us. So I was wondering if you could maybe go back to the moment where maybe you realize pills aren't enough, or again, the things we've been told and what we should be doing instead, and how that sort of ignited this whole mission to rethink wellness.
Yeah, it was the mold exposure. So I was in a moldy office for 13 years and my symptoms were terrible in 2016. So left arm numbness, heart pain, high blood pressure, swollen feet, trouble breathing. It was a mess. I went to urgent care twice. I saw a cardiologist twice. I got 4 EKGs that year. And I'm looking for answers. I went to a bunch of holistic doctors since that's, my field, and wasn't getting answers. So I actually started reading through, I like to collect old nutrition and medical textbooks. So I have them behind me right there.
Yeah, very
And
cool.
I was reading through these books and there was an article in one of the books from 1959 talking about this mechanism of chronic disease. And so in the 1930s, it was called lactic acidosis. Well, we know it now as mitochondrial dysfunction. So these two things occur simultaneously. Lactic acidosis is outside of the mitochondria, and obviously mitochondrial dysfunction is inside of the mitochondria. They occur concurrently. So, but in the 30s, all the doctors and all the students of medicine were studying lactic acidosis. And I can get into the mechanism and stuff, but when I read the article, I was like, wait a minute, I have that. Based on the symptoms, I was like, I have that. But then I knew like it's not a cause, it's a mechanism. So I was like still trying to find the cause. And then 10 months later or 8 months later, I found the cause. For me, it was mold. And then for other people, it's toxins. For other people, it's a bad diet. For other people, it's infections, all leading to mitochondrial dysfunction. So anyways, so I started taking some supplements and I felt better temporarily every time I took the supplement. So I knew I was on the right track. Once I found the mold, I had to move out of the office. It took me a year and a half just to do that. And I was detoxing mold and testing for mold in my urine, mycotoxins in my urine. And I took detox supplements for 7 years for that and saved my life. I mean, I was in terrible shape. I had terrible anxiety, the chest pain, the bad thoughts. A lot of people have bad thoughts, and it's not your personality, it's the toxicity that you have, So that was revolutionary for me, and it really flipped my practice. And I've been holistic since day one, being a chiropractor, and graduated in 97, started focusing on nutrition in 98. So, like hardcore nutrition since 98. And I don't take insurance, so I quit that in '05, so it's been 20 years of not taking insurance. And the purpose of me doing that is to be a better and better clinician, right? Because there's
Hmm.
people that take insurance and they don't get anybody better, but they still get paid. I don't get paid, right, unless I have results. So
Right.
that's what flipped the script for me, was like figuring out lactic acidosis in the spring of 2016.
And for people who don't understand what that means, could you sort of break that down?
Yeah, lactic acidosis means too much lactate in the blood and too much acid in the blood. So lactate and acid, lactic acidosis. And it's a result of, primarily in the 30s, they knew it was a result of excess carbohydrate consumption, like white bread, white sugar, and then you get excess blood glucose, which then is supposed to be sent into the mitochondria. But if you have so much outside of mitochondria, it can convert over to lactate. So the glucose turns to lactate. Then, then the lactate and other poisons. Lactate is a fuel. It's also a poison. And other poisons, including acetate, acetaldehyde, which acetaldehyde is the hangover feeling, and then ethanol, which is alcohol. These all come from excess sugar consumption. So those start to build up in your body from excess sugar consumption or excess carbohydrate consumption. And then you have also this acid, and now your blood is just dirty, and it's got a lack of oxygen. Okay, so when you have that situation, the arteries dilate, including the capillaries. So now you have capillary dilation and hypoxic blood, toxic blood, malnourishing blood, and the cells start to starve, and they can't release their toxins because the blood's already toxic. Now the cells are dying, and then when you have cell death, now you have tissue death, organ death, body death. Most people die through this mechanism of lactic acidosis. Now, again, I've said this before, but that's what they called it in the 30s. Later, they called it demineralization. Later, they called it candy acidosis. Later, they called it sarcopenia. There's about 10 or 12 different names I've collected over the years. It's the same mechanism. And it's a syndrome, meaning it's a predictable series of events that occur. That's what syndrome means. So while lactic acidosis is happening, there's also mitochondrial dysfunction. And that's what a lot of people talk about now. And the way you fix that is you detoxify and you supply the nutrients, especially vitamin B1 is really important for reversing all this. Another word for lactic acidosis is cachexia. And that means that you are eating a lot of food, but you can't gain weight. You can't digest your food. You lose your appetite. So people get cachexia from cancer. They get it from a heart attack. Like my great grandfather had a heart attack in the, 1930s. And he survived it, but he just laid on the couch for 5 years, and then he died. And he couldn't breathe, so they gave him an oxygen tank, but he couldn't afford it, so they took that away, right? So like these are like you can't not being able to breathe well. That's a B1 deficiency. He had cachexia from the heart attack. So again, most people die with this mechanism going on, but it's from different causes. So I hope that answers your question, if that's a good
100%.
summary.
Oh yeah,
Okay, good.
I mean, especially with the example with your great grandfather, it paints a very strong image of what that's like to go through. So how does this sort of shape your practice and lead you to what you're sort of focusing on now? Because a lot of medicine is obviously the quick fixes, the drugs, or basic labs, like we said earlier. Sometimes not even understanding what root causes are, or just kind of ignoring them, or nutrient shortages,
Right.
oxidative stress, whatever it might be. How does that sort of shape your practice from that point?
So it shaped my practice in that, okay, so in these books behind me, the founders of medicine said, here's how you treat chronic disease. They said, fix the causes, fix the mechanism, and then feed the organs to get rid of symptoms. So I made a graphic in 2016 describing that, just like a visual, and started working with that. And then two years later, I made another graphic showing the 7 steps that I take to get people through cleaning up the causes and the mechanism, and then feeding the organs. So I have a graphic to show how you think. I have a graphic to show what you do. And now we got this lab test that was released in January, which measures all of it. It's crazy how it came to be that it's all measured with this one simple lab test. It's a blood test. So yeah, and then there's supplements and diet to like address all the different scenarios, right? It could be detox, parasites, of course, nutritional deficiency, dietary changes. All these things can be seen in the blood test, and then you see the results. It's been fascinating.
For the average person to draw, blood at the lab is not that big of a deal,
Right.
but can give you so many answers to all these decades of expertise.
Right. So the blood test was developed by a team of researchers at LabCorp. And yeah, and I've talked to a couple of them. And what they said, okay, one of them is Dr. Bill Cromwell. He's in Cleveland. He's a lipidologist. He started his practice in 1988. So there was a huge cholesterol scare in the 80s, right? So people were coming to him like, hey, I got high cholesterol. I don't want to die. What do I do? And he over time asked the question, well, maybe cholesterol is not as scary. Maybe it doesn't lead to disease. If it's not such a big problem, then what is? Like, how do we actually measure like the factors of early death or, causation of disease or mortality, whatever you want to call it? So that was kind of the thinking process. And what he and the other researchers did was they looked at 6 different cohorts of people, meaning groups of people. And it's like 30,000 people in total. And they drew their blood and they looked at all these markers and they just waited. Years went by and they saw who died. And whoever died, they would look at what were the highest factors in their blood that could have predicted their death, their early death. Because most of these people had some heart issues and they died around 59, 60, 61 years old. And so out of 30 factors in the blood, there's 6. And so now they just measure these 6 factors and then they do a bunch of math and they give you a score 1 to 100. You want your score to be low. And then based on what your score is, you can see your chance of cumulative mortality over the course of the next 5 years. So if your score is 75, it's not a good score. And if your score is 25, it's a really, really good score. So in my practice now, I'm running these tests on people and we get a number and then we work on bringing it down. And now of these 6 factors, one of them is toxicity, another one is infection and inflammation, another one is malnutrition, and the last one is mitochondrial dysfunction. So it points us in the right direction, like where to go. So somebody can have really good levels of toxins, like they're not toxic, but yet they have a lot of infection and inflammation. And then other people, it's the opposite. They have very little infection, inflammation, but yet they have a lot of toxicity. And guess what? They can have the same symptoms. They can have the same diagnosis. They can have the same, muscular strength or VO2 max. Like these risk factors and disease names and symptoms don't mean too much when you're actually trying to like improve your health. It's all about physiology. Like you want to get your cells working, your mitochondria working well. So that's physiology. So the way that you fix your physiology, step 1 is detox, step 2 is nourish. Now, this is the new viewpoint, too, because a lot of people, they talk about magnesium and they talk about vitamin C, and they're nourishing. But they should first talk about detox, the mycotoxins, the chemicals, the metals. And then they also have to talk about detoxing, the infections, right? Like parasites, candida, virus, bacteria. And that could be sitting in your gut. It's called SIBO, or it could be like in a root canal causing, chronic allergies. That's usually an organism hiding in your face. So it's cleaning the body first, and then you nourish. Now you can nourish at the same time, but you can't skip the cleaning part. Yeah.
Right. Well, so when someone comes to you, do you get a certain type of person that maybe it's chronic fatigue or is it sort of across the board? You sort of have to investigate, for lack of a better word, what exactly their symptoms are. Are there a lot of, I just don't know what it is, but something's wrong?
Right. Yeah. People come to me with something wrong, and then I run the MVX test and I take their history and I do muscle testing for, the biofeedback procedure to figure out what their body wants that way too. So let me give you an example. So last fall, This woman had C. diff, so chronic diarrhea. She went on antibiotics for weeks, and she was better from it. So this spring, then she came to me as a new patient, and she kept talking about residual C. diff, and it's like, okay, let's run MVX and see what happens. Well, MVX showed that her infection inflammation marker was okay. It wasn't great, but it was okay. Her toxicity level was okay. It wasn't great, but she was malnourished. And there's markers in this test that show malnourishment. So, and her brother was in the room with her. I think she's in her early 60s. And I said to her, and she kept talking about C. diff, C. diff, C. diff. I was like, look, it's not C. diff. It's not any kind of infection. You're malnourished. And her brother points at her face and says, yeah, you don't eat enough meat and you eat sugar every day. Like that. So she changed her diet, and in 2 months, she's 90% better. She put on 2 pounds, which she was happy about. Her skin looks so much better, hair not falling out anymore. Like, so that's the point. Like, the diagnosis could be right, it could be wrong, whatever. It's the physiology. We're trying to get the physiology corrected. So that's where MVX Plus comes in. So MVX Plus, the history behind it goes back 100 years. These guys talked about, fixing physiology, right? And then in the holistic functional medical world, we talk about mold, we talk about Lyme disease, we talk about getting rid of parasites and detoxing, all that great stuff. It's in MVX Plus. It's all wrapped up into this nice, neat package. And in my career, I've always said, I'm a better clinician now than I was 6 months ago. That's always been a true statement. But in the last 6 months, my abilities have catapulted so far in advanced because I'm running MVX Plus. So I'm encouraging, holistic practitioners to use MVX Plus. And if you're not a practitioner, you can still order it. You can, convince your doctor to order it, or I have it available on my website for anybody to order it.
And is it urine based or?
No, it's a blood test.
Okay.
It's one vial. Yeah.
That looks like vibrant. Some of them are urine or.
Yeah, and it's crazy inexpensive. It's very cheap.
Okay.
So my cost is $89. And so, like I said, it'll point you in the right direction. So then later you might want to run the $500 parasite, gut test, or the $600 heavy metal chemical urine test, So I still run those tests, but I use MVX to point us in the right direction.
And so, but it's at LabCorp, so that's obviously not a small.
Yeah.
It's not a small.
It's available in the United States, everywhere in the
so
United States. Yeah.
All 50. Okay, got it. So then from there, you're starting to work with people, and what do you think that's going on in your traditional medical offices? You go to your doctor, and okay, we'll just run, like I said in the beginning, we'll run these panels, and how much are they missing, and people just suffering as a result? Like, I would imagine if they're not obviously running this test, you can order it, like you said, you can ask your doctor to order it for you, but a lot of them might push back. Like what does a patient or, a listener here say to convince, maybe they think it's like, I don't know, BS, or it's not going to really change anything. How do you sort of tackle that? Because I definitely think people have that, not fear, but you know what I mean? When they feel like, oh, my doctor knows what's best, so I don't want to challenge their intellect, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, that's the difficulty of changing one's mind. Like you're on this path and you're, raising a family and you're working your job, and here comes a chiropractor like me saying, hey, here's this new blood test that revolutionizes medicine and gives better data for a really low price. It kind of sounds scammy, a little bit, maybe. I don't know. I've been studying this for a year. This has been my career. But then in the medical field too, their business is based on drugs and based on treating symptoms. And they got their model, like, you're on a thyroid panel. So running a thyroid panel or liver enzymes, you're kind of testing the symptoms. You're testing what that particular organ is doing. And you're not really getting into the physiology like MVX does. So yeah, it's a really revolutionary blood test. But when I talk about it, like, it's with the holistic doctors, it's catching on so well. And then when I talk on my YouTube channel, and a lot of patients, of course, see my YouTube channel, they run out and get it. I get people who, they've never met me, they watch a YouTube video, they go get MVX Plus, and then they become a patient in my office. Like it just makes so much sense once you understand, once you get that holistic viewpoint. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but like so like your average medical doctor, right, is not ordering this for most people. Are you sort of at odds with them? Do you find that they push back on this sort of thinking, or how, if you've talked to people on that side of the industry?
I have not.
No?
No. No. And the other thing is, it just came out 8 months ago.
Okay.
So it's a new test and not many
Right.
people know about it. If anybody knows about it, it's because they heard me talk about it.
The
And I'm actually
evangelist,
the
right?
guy,
Yeah.
I'm actually the guy that got it activated for the general public. So I started studying it from a YouTube video from May of 2024, and Dr. Bill Cromwell was a speaker. And I was like, wow, this is a great test. And now the purpose of this test originally was to determine longevity in people with a disease. So cancer, multiple sclerosis, liver transplant, cardiac catheterization. They've done this about on 18 different groups of people. And they just say, okay, here's a bunch of people with this disease. How long are they going to live? And when I saw this initial video about it, and Dr. Cromwell was talking about the 6 factors, I was like, what are these 6 factors? When I looked into that, I was like, wait, I fixed these 6 factors. I've been doing this for years now. I want to run this test on myself. So now we're talking, it's like, summer of 2024. And I called up the NIH because they're the ones that ran it on 30,000 people. And they said, well, we're not running it. And I said, well, why not? And they said, well, we're waiting for consensus. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? I didn't say that, but I was like, what does that
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And the other thing he said was, also, there's a problem because it doesn't measure disease. And I told him, I understand that. It measures functional, physiology. I need to run it on myself. I was, trying to convince him. He said no. So then I called NASA because I know somebody there. You have to have an NMR machine. That's the kind of the trick, right? Right. So
And for people
I called
listening, what is that? I'm sorry to cut you off.
nuclear magnetic resonance. So
Okay.
it's not like the regular testing machine is called PCR. NMR is more advanced. So I called up labs that had a lot of money, and I thought they might have NMR. I talked about 6 different labs, maybe 7, and nobody would run it. And then, okay, so I'm thinking, okay, I need to talk with RFK Jr. I need to break the test up, and maybe I can do the advanced math through ChatGPT. So I had all these thoughts. I got to get this going for the public. So now, of the 6 factors of MVX, one of them is called small isotopes particles, and there's some labs that run that. It's a lipoprotein, and I thought I'll just run that, and somehow I'll get the other ones. And I was like trying to figure out, like, how do I get the small isotopes particles? I don't want to get into too much detail, but I called up a company called Professional Co-op Services. I ordered labs through them, and they only have like 10 people that work for Professional Co-op. Do you know about Professional Co-op?
No, I've never heard.
Okay, so it's a small company. They're a reseller, right? So they sell LabCorp labs, and they sell other laboratory labs. So it's just 10 people. They're like administrators and they're, data crunchers and stuff. Anyways, I called them up. I was like, I want to get small scale particles. I got this question. And he answered my question. And it was, a really simple answer. And I was happy to get that answer. And I said to him, I'm just really excited about MVX. And he goes, well, we have that. And I was like, I know you do, which is a lie. I said, I know you do. You've run it on 30,000 people for the NIH, but I can't get it for myself. And he goes, well, give me 15 minutes. I'll turn it on. Just like that. And it's not,
Wow.
it's Professional Co-op Services turning on a lab for LabCorp. Like they have some kind of a power or control. I don't understand it, but they just turned it on. That was January 6th, and that was a really good day. So then January 15th, I got my blood drawn for my first, MVX score. And on a scale of 0 to 100, my score was 55, which is not good. It's too high. And the reason why it's too high is because I had a gas leak at my house for all of 2024. Okay, now remember, in 2016, I had the mold with terrible heart symptoms, left arm numb, crushing chest pain, difficulty breathing, high blood pressure. It was terrible. Digestive problems. Fixed it. I fixed it. Okay, so now with the gas leak, in May of 2024, I went to my local ER at the hospital. Same symptoms: crushing chest pain, difficulty breathing, high blood pressure, left arm numb, and left leg numb. I thought I was having strokes, digestive problems. And I didn't know that I had the gas leak until December. Okay. All right. So I found it December 7th. I fixed it. And now I'm just breathing clean air. So January, I got my first MVX test, and that's why my score was so bad, because of the gas leak. So I didn't change anything for 4 weeks. I got my test redone, and then my score dropped to 31. So significant improvement of my physiology because I wasn't breathing in gas anymore. So that's just, oh, and then my third test, so every 4 weeks I've been running it. Then my third test went up, it got worse because I had a sinus infection. So then I fixed that, and then 4 weeks later, my test got down all the way to 26. So it goes up and down based on your exposures, your infections. You know, if you're like malnourished, it'll get worse. So it tracks your health. It guides you like what to do with your health. It measures, all these things. It's been fantastic.
So how, well, okay, yeah, it sounds like, especially for your, practicing what you preach. What about the average person? How often should they run this sort of test with you or their practitioner?
So with my patients, I have them run it about every 6 weeks, maybe longer. And there's some logistics there. If somebody has a hard time getting to LabCorp, they drive a far distance. Or let's say I'm helping somebody in another state, so we ship them supplements, and it takes a week, and then they start taking so about every 6 weeks is good, maybe every 2 months, yeah.
And then you basically you get these 6 metrics, and then from there it's determining, okay, if it's a detox protocol or nutrient. Are you doing like nutrient testing as well? If they start to show, how do you sort of address maybe the nutrient side?
So the nutrient side, okay, of the 6 factors, 3 of them are branched chain amino acids. So if they're too low, then the person needs more protein, or they need to digest their protein better. So, and if it's too high, then they're deficient in vitamin B. So it's pretty simple like that. If it's really, really low, and they have, it could be like cachexia, right? So this is what we do. Like it's a simple answer. It's just really, now let me back up a little bit. So I mentioned I had the gas leak. I went to the ER it was May 18th of 2024. I felt so bad. The crushing chest pain was an 8 out of 10. And after 5 hours of being in the ER, they kicked me out, and they said, we can't find anything. They did a CT of my brain looking for a stroke, and they charged me 10 grand. And what happened was, as I was laying in the bed, this is what happened. They got me in the bed in the ER. They put on all the cords, all the leads and stuff. And it's a small hospital. And then they left the room. 3 people. They just left the room. And it turns out they went to lunch for an hour. They left me for an hour. They didn't say, we'll be back in an hour. They didn't say, we're going to lunch. They just left. So now I'm laying there, and I'm watching my monitor, and I can see that my respirations were like inhale, exhale, and then like 6 or 8 seconds later, inhale, exhale. Like there was like this huge lag between inhalation, between respirations. And I'm like, what is this? Well, am I just not breathing? So I got like a little freaked out, and I was like, okay, I need to relax. So I fell asleep, and then the monitor starts beeping. It woke me up, and it said apnea 20 seconds. So I didn't breathe for 20 seconds. Okay. And like, okay, I have apnea. I get it. So I got kicked out after 5 hours. I go to my office. I start some supplements for the nervous system. Okay. And I did a little bit better. Okay. And then 10 days go by, and I'm talking with a patient, and she says to me, okay, I put her on supplements for her gut. And at the end of the visit, and she was doing good. At the end of the visit, she goes, by the way, I've been taking high doses of vitamin B1 for 4 months, and all of my neuropathy is gone, and I'm very happy. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm thinking, wait a minute. I have neuropathy in my left arm and my left leg. Maybe I need B1. So in my office, I carry benfotiamine, which is a fat-soluble version made in Japan in the 1960s for, nervous system repair and respiration repair too. So I did muscle testing, and my body liked it. And so I took 750 milligrams right away. Within 1 hour, I was breathing so much easier. And within 2 weeks, I was 95% better. So here I am all summer and fall, still living with the gas leak at my house, not knowing it was there. But I was doing pretty okay because of the B1. So after that experience, I was like, wait, I think B1 is the most important nutrient for all of humans. And I studied it a lot, and it's also the most important nutrient for plants and animals too. It's the anti-stress, pro-respiration vitamin. So when MVX came out, turns out 4 of the 6 factors are directly related to B1. The 3 of those factors are the branched chain amino acids. So if you're not digesting your protein very well, then you can't get enough amino acids, and it reflects in MVX Plus. You can see it in the lab test. So last year, 2024, I put 300 people on B1. And in my whole career now, we're talking, 25 plus years, B1 has been the single greatest nutrient I've ever used, with tremendous results, getting rid of neuropathy and Guillain-Barré syndrome and, beriberi. Like, I got a patient with asthma, and he can actually feel fluid in his lungs. It showed up on an x-ray or some kind of a scan. And it's like, he's got beriberi, right? The last time beriberi was, which is B1 deficiency, the last time beriberi was ever diagnosed was 1976 in the United States. And it's like, it's endemic, right? People have beriberi, and they get a diagnosis of congestive heart failure, or they get a diagnosis of asthma, or they get a diagnosis of peripheral neuropathy. It's all B1 deficiency. And it's caused by stuff. It's caused by toxins. It's caused by, the diet, like a high calorie, malnourishing diet. So yeah, B1, fixing beriberi, fixing all these symptoms. So I did a presentation in December of 2024 to a group of about 300 doctors, and I was talking about B1, and there are literally 70 symptoms of B1 deficiency, including these end-of-life symptoms such as cachexia and, congestive heart failure and coma and stuff like that. So it's a tremendous nutrient that more people need to use. And there's only like 5 people on YouTube that talk about it, and I'm one of them. So,
and this is something you're sourcing supplements, you said, from Japan?
well, benfotiamine was made in Japan.
Okay.
But it's readily available like everywhere.
You're sourcing your supplements domestically?
Yeah.
Okay. So then someone, when they take this test, they can determine whether that would be beneficial for them, or are you saying that it might be beneficial in small doses for everyone?
It's beneficial for small doses for everyone. So the water-soluble B1 is, it's not very well absorbed, but it's very well tolerated. And so for maintenance, I just say, 200 milligrams of water-soluble B1 for maintenance. But if you are very deficient in B1, then you want the fat-soluble benfotiamine in high doses, like 750 milligrams. Or there's TTFD, which is another fat-soluble B1. It's more for the brain. And that, high dose of that would be, let's say 500 milligrams. So, and then when you do the fat-soluble B1s, most people just need them for about 6 months, and then you're done. And then you can do some maintenance water-soluble. Yeah, but if let's say you quit the B1, your symptoms come back, then you get back on it.
Oh, so then someone, when they come to work with you, right, whether it's in person, are you also remotely as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and I have to say, I have a large practice. So I have like 7 other practitioners all doing.
Yes. No, I've
nutrition.
seen your website.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. What would someone expect coming to work with you in person versus remote?
In person, the difference is you get muscle testing right there in the office. Myself and other practitioners do remote muscle testing too. So there's not much of a difference, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So someone that's coming into you that doesn't know muscle testing, like, can you walk us through that?
Yeah, muscle testing is where you're testing fields, and you're using the patient's arm as an indicator of weakness versus strength. So it's a biofeedback procedure. There's other practitioners that use computers to do like a biofeedback testing procedure. We don't use the computers though. So you're testing fields, you're testing supplements, and the supplements have a field, and you're testing like organs, like the heart has a field and the liver has a field. So you can put a supplement up against the liver area on the skin or the heart area, and you push on the arm, and you can see if the arm goes weak or if it stays strong. So based on, and just that's a really simple way of explaining this. But yeah, so you can determine some really good quality information by doing this biofeedback procedure. In addition to taking history, right, and doing the labs, and then monitoring with the right questions, like between visits, like how you doing since the last visit? Are you better, worse, or the same? Tell me, what changes occurred? Yeah.
What would be if you had to pick the biggest question people come to you with, especially with this test, I would imagine is, longevity, how to get rid of stress in my life, whatever it might be. Do you feel like there's like an overarching theme of people that come to you now that you're more known for this?
An overarching theme?
Yeah.
No,
Like,
I mean, huh?
sorry. No, like if are people coming to you now that they know that you're sort of the guy that's pioneering this test out there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're getting a lot of people with MVX test, MVX Plus run, and then they become a patient. Or like, and then current patients or people that I haven't seen in 5 years, they get it run and they come and see me. And it like, exposes things that we missed in the past, and it opens up new doors for, like, I got a patient who, the poor girl's got interstitial cystitis. And so she urinates like 10 or more times a day. And a couple of years ago, I said, I think you have parasites. So I put her on supplements for parasites, and she actually eliminated worms. Okay, but it didn't change her interstitial cystitis. So we ran MVX, and at that visit with the results, she said, with these parasites, it's causing X, Y, and Z, and I have a virus, and that's causing, I think, the diarrhea is what she said. And then she goes, I got Lyme disease causing fatigue. And I look at her MVX test, and the marker for infection and inflammation was actually kind of low. It was fine, it was pretty good, but she was malnourished. And I said, but the MVX tells us that what you're concerned about is not really the thing that you should be concerned about. You need to eat more protein. That's what I told her. Now, she doesn't have a lot of money, so instead of buying meat, she buys protein bars, which is really expensive, like just buying meat.
Mm-hmm.
And so she argued with me for about 15 minutes. And I was like, the numbers don't lie. You are malnourished. And you would save a lot of money on supplements if you just ate more protein. So, and then she was like, okay. So that was, maybe 3-4 weeks ago. So we'll see how it goes. But my confidence is very high on this. And she looks like she's malnourished. Her cheeks are sunken in and her skin is too white. It's like too opaque, if you will. She just doesn't look healthy because she's eating ultra processed food, not eating any meat, and her immune system is wrecked from it, and her fatigue is bad because her diet sucks. So like if later she can go after more Lyme or viruses or parasites, but right now she got to eat meat.
Yeah, right. So on your YouTube channel, for people that are unaware, what do you get into on that for people to expect if they subscribe?
Well, right now it's been all about MVX, but in the past, I've been on YouTube since 2013.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
I've explored all the topics that really matter. And I've talked about lactic acidosis, mitochondrial dysfunction, detoxing metals, chemicals, parasites, and Lyme, and viruses, and all the things. Diet, of course, keto, carnivore diet, especially. So it's like everything I've talked about on YouTube has now been validated because of MVX, right? And there's specialists. For a while I was like a specialist in parasites, and for a while I was more on nourishment of with glandular supplements and iodine, and all of it is legitimate. But now with this test, we can like do the things that are appropriate for that person at that time. So yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy
really...
because what you're doing is it sounds like, oh my God, why hasn't this been in the mainstream for so long? Because like you said, and I know you can go take more, like you said, $600 for mycotoxins, right? Like you can sort of expand it, but just that base level, that's not like you said, some 10-person lab. It's literally LabCorp. It's you can get it basically in all 50 states. Like it seems crazy that this isn't just part of standard labs.
Right. It should be yearly for everybody. Yearly exams would be a lipid test, maybe somebody might need a thyroid panel, complete blood count, like lipids and CBC, like that's a yearly exam. It should be MVX Plus, without a doubt. And at the very least, get your overall number, and then hopefully you and or your doctor can start to learn about how to actually address the 6 factors and make them better so that your score, goes down. Your overall score goes down, indicating you'll live longer and be healthier.
Yeah. Well, and since you're basically you're the one, talking about it everywhere, what would be the best place if someone wanted to connect with you and work with you? Like, what's your website?
My website is mvxtraining.com for doctors. Also, that same portal for patients is called theholistichealthacademy.com. Okay, and that's education, that's online education. To be a patient, my website for the office is the nhcaa.com, which stands for Nutritional Healing Center Ann Arbor. So the nhcaa.com. So that's where people go straight into, hey, I want to be a patient. I don't want to mess around with videos and education. I just walk me through it, just help me out.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, you obviously have broken it down very eloquently here, and obviously on your YouTube channel. So, but to kind of get working with someone like yourself one-on-one, that would be the place. I'll make sure that's into the show notes.
And that's where you can order MVX testing too. So on the front page of that website, upper right corner, there's a button to click on. It says MVX testing. That's where anybody can get the test for $89.
For someone who just wants to get those numbers and see where their score is, $89 isn't the worst. But thank you for your time today and for sharing all of that. And I'll make sure, again, that your information's in the notes for everyone.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me, Joe. I appreciate it.